We're live. Hi, Gemma. Thanks for joining me today. So excited to be able to sort of sit down and have a chat with you. Pretty exciting. You've just graduated, what, last month, was it?
Yes, last month. Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to talk about my experience in the US and love sharing my knowledge and hopefully influencing a few young ones as well.
Yeah, look, it's like super grateful that you can jump on and spare the time because I know you're hectic. You're planning to you've just moved back from the US to Brisbane and now you're off to Canberra, what, next week or something?
Yeah, next week. So a lot of transition and organizing things. It's a bit hectic, but yeah, glad to
Big,
be here.
big whirlwind couple of weeks with graduation and everything.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get to what is phase two for Gemma, but before we go there, I'd love to just get some insight into your backstory and maybe take you back. What, it's now 5 or 6 years when I imagine when you
Yeah.
started the recruitment process, and how did you first get the idea that this was a good option or an option and start investigating it?
So I think it was back, I was in year 11 of high school. I've always had an urge to travel. I really wanted to do an exchange program through
Yep.
university in the US. Um, I didn't know when that would happen or what it would be, but I knew that I wanted to get over there.
Yep.
At the same time, I was playing field hockey for North, the club, and my coach at the time actually played at the University of Maryland. And she was the one who first kind of introduced, people go over to the US and play, and you could potentially play for 4 years if you wanted to. So I guess that kind of stimulated the idea
Yep.
firsthand. At the same time, an agency kind of propped up in the community, the hockey community that I became aware of, and they're specializing in getting kids over to the US. And so I kind of hopped on the bandwagon with them, as well as a few of my other friends at North as well. So we all kind of decided to jump into this process. I knew that I had to do it because I love to travel and I love that curiosity. I knew
Yep.
there was so much out there that I could gain from this experience. So that kind of started the whole process. After that, I was emailing a lot of coaches. Dartmouth actually expressed a lot of interest in me after I sent them a video of myself playing,
Yep.
and they basically got me out for an official visit over there. So they flew me over for about 3 days. I had the time of my life. I spent it with the team, looking at the college, just really immersing myself in the whole experience. And after that, I basically couldn't say no. It was a no-brainer for me and my parents. I absolutely had to go. And yeah, so that's basically how I jumped into it.
Yeah, and your experience from memory is sort of a little bit similar to us. Had an agency in the background, but really had to do the bulk of the work yourself and initiate your own opportunities. Was that sort of your experience as well?
Yeah, so I had the agency was really good in that they could tell me things that I had to do logistically in terms of regulations, keeping up with paperwork, that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I did do a lot of the emailing with the coaches, scheduling, and once we got to a certain point, I kind of took it all off
Yeah.
on myself.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice for everybody to take control and ownership of the process and drive the process yourself, regardless of whether you're doing it on your own or with an agency. It's really important to take ownership. So it's pretty exciting, that discovery process of just going through the journey of finding out what's on offer. So
Yeah.
obviously got you excited. So I've just got some notes here because there's so many things I want to cover with you. I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. So once you got through that process, what was the biggest driver or the biggest motivation for you to keep pushing through? Because it can be complex, it can be time consuming, so you just got to keep hammering away. So what was keeping you sort of motivated and running at that goal?
Mm-hmm. I think once I had the visit, I knew that it was absolutely anything out of this world that you're offered at an Australian university. This experience is so different
Yeah.
and it offers so much. And once I had that sneak peek into that, I knew that I had to do it. Obviously, Dartmouth College is an excellent academic institution, and that was also pushing me. But I think that there are tons of amazing universities in the US that are recognized worldwide and have this high caliber of education. And knowing that that would stand me out, whether I decided to stay in the US after or come back to Australia, that was a huge factor. Just being able to say you lived overseas for 4 years at a top level university is going to stand out for anyone.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, because one of the big advantages with the process that you've been through, and that student athletes, international student athletes particularly going over there, is that it's the journey that you're on, and it's the person that you become along the way, and the experiences and the learnings and the things you go through. It just gives you this massive point of difference between every other graduate out there with a degree. And we'll get to that, because you've got some exciting stuff ahead of you. So phase 2 for Gemma's sounding pretty exciting too. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But I guess the whole process, there's some physical or operational or process challenges that you go through. So what were some of the friction points or the tough parts of the process that you had to just push through, or maybe struggled with at the time?
Yeah, I think, well, in my final year of high school, SATs are coming up for everyone. At the same time, you've got year 12, which is obviously very important. I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, so I really wanted to do well at year 12 and finish off high school very well. But I also had this enormous pressure on myself to do well in the SATs to be able to get that guarantee into Dartmouth. So that took a lot of logistical planning in terms of time management, managing my schoolwork, and also doing SAT tutoring every week, taking the tests. I think back then it was kind of more difficult in that there were less providers of SAT tests. I think there's maybe a few more now as it's becoming more popular, so that's really good. And SAT tutors were also hard to find at the time as well. So that process was kind of hard, but once you get over that hurdle, it's definitely worth it. The other physical, and when I say physical, I mean literally physical thing that I had to overcome was the fitness difference between the US and Australia, and preparing, making sure you're physically prepared and know what you're getting into when you go over to the US. So when I got over there, I was probably in for a little bit of a shock. And it definitely takes some time to accustom yourself and your body and your fitness levels to the standard that they want. And so that you just have to recognize that there is a different level there, and you might be on the back end of some things, but you'll be at the fore end of a lot of things as well. Yeah,
exactly. And it's a really interesting point you make, because I mean, in Australia, you typically, playing at a senior level, you might be training 2 hours a week, playing 1 hour a week. And then you go into pre-season, and then you've got these 2 intense weeks, and then you've got like 20 contact hours a week and 2 games a week and travel. And so it's pretty exciting, but I can imagine the intensity you went through.
Yeah, it's completely, someone described it once as a full-time job, and that's pretty much what it is on top of your schoolwork when you're over there. So pre-season, you're training twice a day for 2 or 3 hours a day a time, and then you've got all that additional stuff like conditioning, lifting, rehabilitation, like stretching. We have like stretching sessions, skills mapping out that is in the classroom. So there's all these different things that they just put so much time and effort into that I had no idea was going to happen. But once you're acclimatized to it, it definitely gets so much easier. And that's why you have your teammates there. And that's why you become such good friends and family with them, because you literally spend 5 hours a day with them.
Yeah.
But it all becomes a part of the process.
Yeah. And I mean, that process and that intensity and the elite nature and the professionalism of the college sporting system over there is what allows you to take your game to the next level. But it's that whole package of what you went through that makes you so attractive to employers at the end of the day too, because I guess there's a lot of employers in the USA that specifically look to focus on and target and recruit student athletes.
Yes, for sure. They're really looking at these like tangible, the skills that aren't tangibly held, like communication and leadership and just being able to follow orders and communicate assertively. And these things you can't really teach in in an internship or something like that, you really have to be in a team setting to
Yeah.
understand what that feels like.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So it's a big decision at 18 to go, yeah, bye friends, bye mum and dad.
Yeah.
I'm going to the other side of the world. See you soon. So what were some of the emotional things that you had to sort of deal with through that process? Because, I mean, excitement at one level of going, and then the challenges of all the relationships at the other level. How'd you deal with that?
Yeah, I have great supportive parents, and they were phenomenal throughout the entire process. They didn't question my desire to go over there. They knew how much it meant to me, and I think that was like a mutual trust that we both had.
Yeah.
So going over there is definitely tough for anyone, especially when you're so busy with a sport. It can be really hard to keep in contact regularly. So
Yeah.
I would find myself, wanting to stay in touch like every few days, but not being able to because I'm so tired and they're sleeping in different time zones. But you get through it. And I think one of the major things that got me through it was having a support system in the US that I developed straight off the bat. The girls on my team, and that goes for any sport that I know, become your family, and they literally bring you in, especially as international students. I've been to so many of my friends' houses for long stays, for Thanksgiving, and they really become my family and have just taken me in under their wing, and that helps bridge a bit of the gap between me and my parents. My friends have also been so supportive. They, from the get-go, they were supportive of me applying to Dartmouth. So then also the communication with them doesn't come as easily or as frequently as I would like, but it's kind of that situation where once I get back or once I'm in contact with them, it's like we never left each other.
Yeah, and that's the value of good friendships, isn't it? The separation of time and distance doesn't matter. You just pick up when you pick up. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So what can you tell us about the process of the initial move? So you go from Australia straight into pre-season, then straight into season. So it's pretty full on for about 3 months, and then things quieten down. So can you talk us through that initial transition and new dorm and new team and new lifestyle and new routine?
Yeah. It honestly feels like somewhat out of a movie because it's so long ago in my mind, but at the same time, I just can't believe it. Literally, it is what I imagined when I watched TV shows or movies about freshmen moving into their college dorms.
Yeah.
So getting over there, I think I left a week earlier than preseason started, which was definitely needed as an international student to adjust to jet lag because you don't want to be like dealing with that on top of training. And that process was difficult because I didn't have the friends yet, and I had to organize a lot of things like phones and bank accounts, laptops, just like every little thing that Americans already have set up, you have to set up. So that could be difficult. Luckily, I quickly developed a support system with my friends and teammates and coaches, and they were really helpful in helping me adjust. But then once you get thrown into preseason, I think you just kind of get thrown into so much that you're just along for the ride until those 3 months end. You're just riding it out and you're having the time of your life and everything's changing. And then once season's over, you can start to relax and be like, oh, okay, so now I'm living in America, and what's that like, and connect all different things.
Yeah, awesome. And so you had a plan going in as far as academically, what you wanted to study, what you were looking for. Can you talk a little bit about that? The flexibility of the US education system and just the support that you get as a student athlete academically. How did you find that process?
Yeah, so that's been a bit of a whirlwind. So I came in with a completely different expectation of what the US system was about. So in Australia, we have a system that's very direct and specialized. You go in knowing you're going to study business or engineering, and then you get your degree in that, and that's final pretty much. In the US, in many schools, it's becoming a huge trend is this liberal arts education where you go in and you don't have a major and you basically don't have to declare it until the end of your second year after taking a variety of different subjects to see what you're interested in, to see where you excel best at, and then going from there. So when I came in, I initially was planning to study business in Australia. Dartmouth College doesn't have a business degree or anything of that sort. The closest is economics. So I took some economic classes, figured out that it didn't work for me. It wasn't really what I expected nor wanted out of a degree. So then I was kind of like thrown. I was trying a lot of different subjects. I fell into love with this subject, geography, which is very different, and it's actually specialized to Dartmouth College in particular. So that allowed me to study a lot of different physical and human geography subjects, and so that's what I've majored in. But at the same time, I've taken classes in almost every field: history, technology, English, Native American history in the US, international development. I've taken such a wide array of subjects that I've really prepped myself for handling any situation in the future that any job could throw at me. And that's the whole purpose of a liberal arts education, is to make you so well-rounded that you can just jump into anything and succeed well at it.
Yeah. And then, when you select your major, you've had that exposure of lots of different things along the way that you start to really get clarity into the process, rather than sort of having to make a single decision and commitment straight out of high school. So, interesting.
No, that was a huge benefit to me. And had I not had that, I could have suffered enormously in my grades and been unhappy with the choice I had made.
Yep. So you've done the 4-year process as an elite athlete. Can you tell us, just 4 years, there must have been so many highlights, so many challenges that you've had to overcome. Can you tell us just a little bit about that journey and the things that you've experienced along the way? How did you find the cultural shift from Australia to the US?
Yeah. So a huge culture shock, probably more than people would expect, because we're both kind of similar countries. My college in particular is very high up near Canada, so it's very cold. So that was a huge weather cultural shock for me. And at first I didn't like it. I didn't like the snow and being freezing all the time, but actually coming back into the winter, I really miss it now. And I wish that we had more of a winter season here rather than this like 20-degree weather.
Canberra will help you out with that.
Yes, it will. So huge culture shock with the weather. I think the other thing is the intensity. You don't really realize what NCAA Division I sports means to the US and to American athletes until you're in it and you see how hard everyone's truly working. It's at this elite level that you don't get from playing club sports here. You really have to be in the like national, state representative levels to be training that hard and putting that much time and effort into that. But that's what these people do every day as a part of the US system. So that was a huge change for me, but one that I quickly jumped onto, and you become so immersed in it and so like encouraged by the school spirit that you love it, you follow it so heavily. So that's the other thing that I found was the school spirit. So back in Australia, there's not much of a sense of, oh, I go to this university and I love it and I'm so proud to be here. In the US, it's completely different. I bleed green. Big Green is our mascot, and I absolutely love Dartmouth. Will support it for the rest of my life. And that sense of school spirit and community is something that you don't get here, and it is so heartwarming to be a part of. Wouldn't want to change that for the life of me.
Yeah, and then at the back end. At the back end of that process as well, the alumni are so engaged. It becomes a lifelong engagement with the student body. So you develop this massive international network by association, and it's just the value of that is huge from a career perspective. It's one of the big benefits that are not immediately obvious to young people, students, or even Australian parents, that
Mm-hmm.
community that you just spoke about and the networks are massive.
Yes, yeah, people love their experience at Dartmouth College. They give back so much as alumni. And if I met someone on the street who went to Dartmouth, they would not hesitate in giving me a job or a career opportunity or a house to stay in if that's what I wanted. I have no doubt that I would be able to reach out to anyone who went to Dartmouth and have my best interests at heart. Such a strong support system and sense of community for life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's next for Gemma Bautista?
So fortunately for me, I was lucky enough to get a job. So actually the one thing that was difficult was sometimes getting employers to give me a job interview when I was over there, because I wanted to get ahead of the game and kind of start the process early. Yep. But luckily there were a few companies that gave me online job interviews. One of them worked out extremely well, which I just accepted. It's a consulting position at MXA Consulting, which is a consulting firm in Canberra. And basically they work with the government, both at the federal and state level, to help them solve all their problems. We specialize in strategic and digital transformation consulting. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I actually just went down there 2 days ago to meet the team and get a tour of the office, and everyone was lovely and so excited to have me on board. A few of them actually had gone to school in the US or had done business near where my school was, and had great things to say about the place. And yeah, we instantly clicked. So I'm very excited to start that process.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited for you. That sounds fantastic. So, like, you've given us a huge amount of time, Gemma. I really appreciate that. Just in closing, if you were to sort of impart some sort of advice to young athletes contemplating this or going through the process right now, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think when I was going through, I kind of envisioned my journey to be completely about field hockey. And I kind of didn't realize how much of my life it would affect socially, academically, personally, and emotionally. And that has grown me as a person that I could never have imagined I would have become had I stayed here in Australia. I literally am so thankful for the experience. I would not change it for the world. And I think that if you get the chance and if you have the means to, that everyone should be trying to get out there, whether it's for 6 months or I would recommend the entire 4 years. Going to a school in the US is going to give you an invaluable experience that doesn't compare. It will be the best 4 years of your life, undoubtedly.
Excellent. Great. Well, Gemma, thank you for your time. Super excited to follow your journey in the next phase of what you're doing. So we would love for you to stay in touch. And thank you for so much time, imparting your experience and giving us a bit of an insight into your journey. It's just been amazing, and it's only the beginning. So
thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on here.